All right, guys, welcome back to Outlap Critical. This is going to be episode number 3. And so, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. If you like the episode, comment, leave us 5 stars, and let some other people know about your favorite F1 podcast. And so, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. And we're going to be talking about just the 2024 season so far, how we feel about it, what's been going on around the world of motorsport. Then we'll also talk about who's on the hot seat, which drivers should be uncomfortable right now, kind of going forward, and we'll also be talking about who's waiting for an F1 seat, and if Formula One is doing themselves a disservice by not allowing other teams to come in and therefore giving us some more room on the grid for some of the younger drivers. And so let's dive right in. 2024. So far, we've seen the Max Verstappen show yet again, or should I say the Red Bull show again. This year, it has been Max and Checo 1-2 by quite some margin. And I think it's time we just had the conversation. Given the dominance that we're seeing right now, I think a lot of times it's really easy for people to make that natural leap to say, okay, Max is this otherworldly talent that we've never seen the likes of before in Formula One. And when you really get to when you really break it down and start looking into what is really going on, it really, to me, the farther along the races we get, the more to me it seems like it's got to be the car. um this isn't to throw any shade on Max obviously is a world-class driver, um best driver on the grid right now, bar none. Um but we also do have to reasonably establish that he's got essentially a car that's so much faster than everybody else's. You put a top driver in that car, you're going to get those results. Um, then you start talking about Checo. You know, we really have to really consider what's going on. We have to consider what's going on with Checo because we've got Max winning the races by 20, 30, 40 seconds sometimes. This year, Checo is right behind him, as right behind him as you can get. 12 seconds behind him in some cases, a little bit more. But you know, let's just break it down. So let's start with 2021. Max and Lewis are kind of going back and forth. We all know what happens in 21. We don't need to rehash it. But at the end of the day, you had two cars that were right on top of each other. And then the new regulations come in. And so that's kind of what you can expect in this kind of engineering series, where at the end of the day, the regulations will eventually get better and better and better. The engineers will get better and better and better at building these vehicles up to the standard of the rule set. And so you get to the point where in 2021, you've got all the constructors that are basically as good as it's going to get with the vehicles. The cars are as good as they're going to get because you've had 4 to 5 years to mess with regulations. And so now we get into 22, and almost immediately it's obvious, who's going to be, carrying the load this year. And it's not that close. And so Max goes on to win 99% of the races or something like that. Not 99% because Checo won a few. But Red Bull wins all but one race. And now we're leading into this year, and it looks like it's basically going to be the same thing. Um, but how do you make that leap is what I'm trying to figure out. If you're a Verstappen fan, you got to let me know, how do we make that leap from uh, somebody who is early in his career, fighting his way up into the mid, you know, bottom of the top tier, you know? Um, then he's in the top and he's competing with the best drivers. And this is getting into that 19, 20, 21. Now we get to 22, and all of a sudden he's 30, 40 seconds up the road, you know? I I don't know how we make that leap from somebody who is racing with the best drivers, and now all of a sudden he is miles and miles and miles and miles apart. That just screams machinery. Otherwise, you're telling me that all the other drivers on the grid suddenly forgot how to drive, or suddenly Max got so much faster than everybody else over the course of 2 or 3 seasons, You know, we've already seen what happens. Let's take Alonso for instance. You take Alonso out of a bad car and you put him into a good car, and suddenly, or a car that's even decent. Let's say the Aston Martin is decent. You put a Fernando Alonso in that seat, and suddenly that car is alive. And you can see the contrast between a world class Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. And so you see what somebody behind the wheel of a decent car can do. And so you then take that where the Aston Martin was to what what Fernando did once he got to the seat. What happens if Fernando was in that second seat? You know, I think you still have a ginormous gap to the rest of the field simply because it's a car that's so well designed by Adrian Newey that once Max got his hands on it, and they've obviously built the car around Max, which they should. Um, he's a very talented driver, and so basically, what we're displaying right now and what we're seeing is the gap not between Max and the rest of the field, but the gap between Adrian Ewing and his design team and the rest of the field. And so again, that's not to throw shade at Max because again, I think if you put Max in any top car, he's going to be fighting for wins. But I think it's naive to say, because we've seen such a good run over the last couple of years that suddenly this person is the greatest driver of all time and it's not close. I just don't know how we make that logical leap. Um, we can name several drivers on the grid who would do fantastic in that car. And so let's take it. Let's do a thought experiment, and let's take it from an engineering series to a spec series, and every single person has the exact same car. Now, do I think Max is still going to be close to the front? Absolutely. Um, but then now we're talking about a different thing because you're going to have Lewis, you're going to have Nico Rosberg. I know a lot of people don't think about Nico, but he qualifies crazy good in that Haas all the time. He's a great qualifier. I think he's one of those people that just has never had the opportunity to be in a winning car. But I'm gonna put Nico up there with his experience. Then we have Fernando Alonso, um, Lando, um, Oscar, maybe Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. I mean, we will be talking about different race winners every week. And I think that the easiest way to prove this, this theory that I have about Max being a dominant driver, but basically having a car that's worlds apart from everybody else, is, what's going to happen when regulations change. If Max is as good as everybody is claiming that he is on the Verstappen side, obviously, then when the regulations change, there should still be that gap. So basically, for the rest of Max's career, he's created this much space between him and the next person. That's what we've been saying over the last couple of years, and I just think sometimes we get caught up in the moment, and it's exciting to talk about. Oh yeah, we have Max Verstappen. He's the greatest driver ever. I was in his era, and I heard about him and I watched him, and there's nobody ever been like this. And we get caught up in the moment, and we forget that you know there have been other dominant cars and other dominant drivers. I think the biggest factor that makes things different here is with other dominant cars, there were other dominant cars, if that makes sense. So in 21, when Lewis and Max were competing, were competing for the title, basically the cars were pretty evenly matched. I mean, there are going to be some that say the Red Bull was faster, some that'll say the Mercedes was faster, but at the end of the day, they were in the same ballpark. They were within the margin of error, so to speak. And so that's the difference, is that Max is in a car that is so, like, he's essentially driving a race car while everybody else is driving a school bus or a tractor or whatever you want to call something slow. And so um regardless of the driver that's in the other vehicle, you're not going to catch up with that rocket ship. And so long as Max doesn't make any mistakes, he has a greased path to the championship again this year, or at least that's the way it looks. I mean, of course, we have upgrades coming in, but again, Red Bull's already where they want to be. and they'll have upgrades as well. What's to say that we don't have that gap? So going back to what I was saying before, when we have a driver of this dominance, I want to see what they do in the next era of Formula One. Is the gap still there? Or if some of the rumors are to be true, some of the craziness going on with Red Bull, if Max were to go to a different team, how would he fare in a lesser car? I think we're seeing that with Lewis Hamilton right now, struggling with a car that has issues. I don't think he's used to driving in a car that has that he doesn't have that feel for. And so when you put him in a car that feels good, he drives well. When you put him in a car that he has to work with, he doesn't do so well. How does Max do in a car that really isn't keeping up with the pack? Or a lot of people say, put Max in the Mercedes and he wins several races that year, last year. Put Max in the Aston Martin and he wins several races. Well, my question would be, who is in the Red Bull? Like, I mean, of course, Max wins if the Red Bull isn't there, but I mean, the point is that the Red Bull is there and it is worlds faster than any other vehicle on there. Again, this is going to sound like shade to Max Verstappen. It's not, it's just the reality of it. Red Bull is dominant. They have the best design car, and the rest of the field hasn't caught up yet. I would take that personally. Or one of the other engineers, and every single year we have to watch Red Bull streak away. Like, if I'm one of the team owners, I'm hiring one of those cats from NASA. I'm looking anywhere I can find speed. I don't care where, but I got to find somebody. You can't every single year come in and have the same guy run laps around the entire field. There's got to be somebody out there, or somebody got to pony up and put the money together and hire him away from Red Bull or something like that. But you can't have a gap this big in the field and expect compelling, I won't say compelling racing because there's so much going on behind Max that, I think there's a lot of compelling racing going on. But, what do you do if you're the FIA, and you've got somebody like an Adrian Newey who is so far and beyond, you know, everybody else is, you know, but I guess this is kind of the first year or the first set of this is the first one that was nailed really in year one. Year one, that car took off and it was well, well, well ahead of everybody else. And now we're in year three. Going into year four, will we close the gap more, or will Red Bull change the concept again like they did this last time? They weren't satisfied with greatness, so they changed the concept again. Will they do that again going into next year? But I also think that's a product of them having the time to do that. So they have the luxury of extra time because Max is so far ahead. I don't really feel like they need to focus so much on this year's iteration of car because at times, I mean, if you saw the gap between Max and the rest of the field when it came to the qualifying, like if you actually seen it on paper, the gap is so far that I don't know if Red Bull really needs to put a lot of focus into this vehicle. And a few more races into the year, we'll find out for sure. But um, again, I think that's a benefit of having the extra time. If you have extra time to design the next year's car, to put together more details and get more in depth and everything, you get to start essentially a year ahead of everybody else. And so Red Bull has kind of been in front of everybody else for quite some time now, and it's gonna require, it's got to be another engineer out there. He can't be the only one. You can't tell me he's the only engineer that's figured this stuff out. You better hire somebody from NASA. I'm telling you. I'm getting one of them cats. I'm getting one of them cats from the space program. Something. I got to figure it out. I can't let Adrian Yu run away from this thing again. So, 2024 so far, we've got Max Verstappen. Let's talk about Checo, actually. I did want to talk about Checo. So, the thing about Checo is, last year I was just like, man, this cat, he just can't drive no more. But then, like, when you start looking at it, a lot of people were saying, it was the pressure of him trying to compete for world championships, against Max and things like that. That's going into a broader subject. Checo's going to be, we'll circle back into Checo, but the broader subject is Red Bull does not want two drivers that are capable in their program. They want their dominant driver, and then they want somebody else who basically essentially can be the rear gunner or somebody who can clean it up if something happens to the other car. But they don't want, Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton, for instance. That's not what they're after. Um, And I think part of it is to protect Max's ego. And the thing is, I don't know if Max even needs or wants that. But if you catch the radio messages, things that they say to Max, they're over. Um, no matter what Max does, never critical. No matter what's going on in the race, Max is pouting about something or another. And they're on the radio as quick as they can, talking about, oh well, Max, we'll take care of this. We'll send it. We'll do this. We'll do that. And they handle him with kid gloves. So they handle him with kid gloves almost. Um, like they'll tell him, Max, that was a good job. You were so far away from the next person. Max, great job on today's race. You didn't even have to use another set of tires, or you even got to coast the whole time. And it's like they just go over the top with the praise, it seems like. And I don't know if that's something that Max needs. I don't know if that's just something they feel like they need to do. They've had him since he was a kid. They know him better than anybody else. But they just kind of go over the top with the praise. But anyway, with the gap that we have here, you've got Max at the beginning of the race. He's gone, and this year it seems like Checo is. I don't buy the thing where last year they're saying, oh, it was too much pressure, too much pressure. These guys know what real pressure is. The pressure to win a Red Bull, for a young driver, maybe, but Checo's not a young driver. He's been around for a while. This kind of pressure, I don't think, is going to be anything different than what he's already experienced as he's grown up in the paddock now. Like, he's been around for quite some time. I just don't give any credence to, oh well, he was too busy trying to win. I mean, you don't think he's trying to win this year? It's just Max is faster. I mean, Mexico, we call it a lapse of judgment, but I mean, like, game of inches. You know what I mean? Like, he was right there. I mean, he's trying to win. I mean, especially in Mexico. But I mean, like, the thing about it is, I don't think that anything changes this year from last year. The only difference is the car is much better. And now Checo is getting better qualifying positions. But you'll notice he's still not qualifying P2. He's in the middle of the pack with much lower cars. He gets right around them. And by the time he gets to the front of the pack, Max is 30 seconds away. He gets within 10 to, well, not 10 to 15, I'm tripping. He doesn't do that. He gets closer, let's say, and then the race ends as 1-2. Of course, again, we're only 2 races in. But with Checo, isn't this kind of what they want? Like, we're all talking about, Checo's going to be replaced in the next year. But, I mean, they don't want anybody competitive. I mean, Checo doesn't really ruffle any feathers. He kind of chills. He's kind of, Checo's just Checo. He also brings in a lot of money. And so, like, does Red Bull really want to throw that away and bring somebody else in who they don't want to be competitive? They're talking about bringing Lando in, but come on. You don't want... Max and Lando aren't going to be sitting next to each other in a competitive car. There's just no way. And so, Fernando as well. Fernando gets feisty. He's not going to be in a car next to Max with that kind of speed. And we're talking 1v1 at this point. You put Fernando in that car next year. Or, you know what? Let's do it this year. Let's switch them. And put Checo back in the... Checo is going to be in the Aston Martin, and Fernando is going to be in the Red Bull. Man, they will be at each other's necks within the first race weekend. One, I think Fernando outqualifies Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. So we'll start with that. Fernando is great qualifying. I think he gets Max. Now, we're not talking about, okay, he switches over the first time he jumps on the car, he outqualifies Max. That's not what I mean. I'm just assuming that he's had opportunity to get the setup the way he wants it. And now we're going, bar for bar, basically, And so I think he beats Max in qualifying. And then there's going to be a lap 1, turn 1 incident. If y'all ever seen Max, when he's attacking for the first corner, he literally will run you off the road. That's it. That's the game plan. Like, lights out, Max is going to run you off the road, and then he's going to take position and scamper off and be gone. That's what's going to happen. And the driver to his side is usually Charles, so Charles is going to get out the way. He wants no problems with Max, and I think he knows that his car is not going to... the Ferrari's not going to keep up anyway, I guess. I mean, I would hope that's not what he thinks, but, I mean, he's getting out of the way. And so Max is going to run you off the road, but that's not happening with Fernando. Fernando's not going to let that slide. He's not going to let it go, and I think he's a craftier racer than Max. The thing that's making Max look so great right now is that he's running in clean air. Max is running in clean air for 99% of the race, and in most cases, it's after lap one. Max doesn't see anybody for the rest of the race, and so he's literally just driving Miss Daisy for the next 50 laps, and it makes him look like a genius because he doesn't have to have any real constant. I don't. I'm tripping. Not. He does have to have concentration. That's not what I mean. But he doesn't have to deal with wheel to wheel action. He doesn't have to deal with defending on tires and making sure his tires last in the race. Tire management. He doesn't have to do all of that right now. And again, no shade to Max. It's just a shocking reality. I mean, it's just the truth of the matter. His car is just that much quicker. So with Checo, I think that Red Bull needs to really consider what they have in front of them. They've got the world's best driver in Max Verstappen right now. Nobody can prove them otherwise because they ain't gonna catch that car. And then they've got a great rear gunner, somebody that can defend. We saw it in 21. Somebody that's not going to ruffle any feathers. He generally says the right thing in the media, doesn't really ruffle any feathers. He just kind of, he's chill. And you got somebody that's fast enough to make sure he beats all the other cars. You've got exactly what you want. Red Bull 1 2 all the way. And so, you know, a lot of changes are happening in Red Bull. It's been kind of a lot of news followed by nothing happening, a lot of news followed by nothing happening. But like touching briefly on the Christian Horner situation, listen, Red Bull has to be right here. You know, Obviously, none of us know what happened in this situation, but for Red Bull to do an internal investigation and then send the accuser home, you know, they're making a strong statement there. I don't know if people understand how strong of a statement it is by a global brand, because if you do that and you're wrong, you're finished. Like, we're not here for any of that. So like, if you're dismissing the accuser, you better have it cold, and they must have something. There's so many stories thrown on. I don't like jumping into it because we don't really know what happened. We get the news reports, we see but who's to say what's right, what's wrong? Who's to say what actually happened? And so I don't like getting too deep into those. But I just know that if a global corporation, a multi-million dollar corporation, a multi-billion dollar corporation is going to do an internal investigation, and then at the end of the internal investigation tell the accuser you got to step out, they better have it concrete, because if you get that wrong, it's a wrap. So does Formula One have a problem with the driver market as hot as it is right now? We have a lot of drivers that are going to be out of their seats in 24, or I'm sorry, 25, and a lot of drivers waiting in the wings. A lot. So, we're coming fresh off the heels of Formula One deciding that they weren't going to allow Andretti to join the grid. Um, won't get deep into that, but you know, had they allowed them to join the grid, we'd have two more probably promising stars, driving for them right now. But as it stands, you know, we've got a lot of drivers that are kind of just waiting in the wings, and so let's start with Theo. Theo obviously voiced his opinion about not getting an opportunity to have a seat after winning the Formula 2 championship, but you know, he's the first one that comes to mind. Then we also have Philippe Drogovic. We have Kimi Antonelli, and we have Liam Lawson and Ali. Um, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but there's so many young drivers that are waiting for an opportunity to get on the grid. Um, and so, the question is, you see this in other sports. So, football, for instance, American football. You will see a very experienced but very expensive player be cut to get maybe a not as experienced, maybe not as talented younger player because they cost less. And so, with the cost cap era now with Formula One, are we going to start seeing teams look to bring on young drivers? instead of having the older drivers that are a little more experienced and maybe cost more. Maybe that's the route that's going to happen next. But, how are we going to get some of these younger drivers into the grid? So, I'm going to jump right into the next segment, which is the hot seat segment. And this is kind of to get an idea of, who is, you know, uncomfortable in their seat right now, who is, just fine, who's chilling, and, who's kind of in the middle. And that can kind of maybe give us an idea of what the seats are going to be like coming in 25. A couple of pieces have already fallen. Lando signed his contract. Lewis has already moved on to Ferrari, at least following this season. So some of the drivers are already set up and ready to go, but there are a lot of drivers that aren't. And so, this segment we're going to be talking about who's on the hot seat, and we're going to break down every driver and how hot is their seat is basically we're trying to figure out what's going on. So we'll start with Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll's seat is ice cold. He could come in last. It doesn't matter. That's his seat. Pops went all the way through with buying the Formula One team. So, yeah, that's his seat. His seat is ice cold. So, Lance, more power to you. I kind of feel like I wonder when Lance is going to get bored with this and get tired of people talking the way I'm talking right now, about his driving performance. But he has looked a little better this year, low key, but his seat ice cold. He has no problem. Next is Max Verstappen. Max is, the crazy thing is we're hearing rumors about Max go to the other teams and things like that, and all this dissension in Red Bull. Man, Max would be outside of his mind to leave the island that he's on right now to join the pack with the rest of them. He's not going back there. Like, Max is not going back there. Max is well aware of his comfortable seat right now, and he is not going anywhere. Max seat ice cold. He not going nowhere. Charles Leclerc. I mean, Charles Leclerc's seat ice cold as well, not going anywhere. They've got him signed up through I think 28, if I'm not mistaken. They've got him signed up. They've got him locked up for a little bit. And I think with Charles is just going to be a matter of they see the promise and what he can be, and they're not going to allow anybody else to hone in on that. Basically, I kind of feel like it's just Ferrari needs to get their stuff together, and Charles can maybe make something happen. He's very fast in the qualifying lap, so that means you have a very good opportunity to be on the front of the grid. Pole position, but with Charles, I think that eventually, we need to see more wins. Red Bull is standing, obviously, but we need to see more wins, and I want to see him. I want to see him fight with Max. Like, enough of this. Enough of this. I'm just gonna give way because Max is close to me. Like, you got to put your car in a position to fight back. Like, even if you're not gonna come out in front in the long run, he's got to know that you're gonna get your elbows out right off the bat. Don't let him just run past you. Charles Leclerc, his seat ice cold. Lando Norris, same thing. See, ice cold for Lando. Lando just signed the contract. They extended him. I think McLaren is I think McLaren low-key is the one that kind of got the whole ball rolling thing because they just forget silly season. They said, I'm going to take care of this immediately. Nobody will be taking care of our driver. We're going to go ahead and get you extended right now. So Lando's ice cold. He's not going nowhere. But, I mean, bro, they brought a fast rookie, and I mean, he's not a rookie anymore, but they brought a fast driver in next to you, man. And, you're going to need to kind of show us that you are that guy still, because Oscar is here to fight. Oscar is fighting this year. So, that being said, no issues there. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, his seat is ice cold, but only just. Because he's got the Ferrari thing going on next year, but I think that we can't forget that's next year. I mean, George is giving him work this year so far. And so, I mean, of course, this is how last year started too. And everybody freaked out about George doing this and this and this, and then Lewis, does what Lewis does once the car gets comfortable. And so, but you know, not really hot. No real pressure there. I think that he wants to perform really well, leaving the team. This is going to be his last year, and so I think that he really wants to perform well. But I don't feel like he's got a lot of pressure to do so. I mean, he's got the medals, he's got the gold. Now it's just a matter of beat your teammate. You know, beat your teammate. Oscar. Oscar, he's still a young driver, and I think McLaren knew what they were had knew what they had when they went through all those limits to snipe him away from Alpine. Thank God that they did that, right? And so anyway, I think Oscar is his seat's ice cold. There's nothing going on there. Oscar is chill, and no pressure at all for him. And so all these seats so far, are basically 100% secure except for that Mercedes seat. So does Mercedes put Kimi Antonelli in? Kimi has not been. I don't want to say he hasn't been impressive. I mean, that's not a nice way to put it, but he hasn't been dominant. And maybe it's a thing where they need to get him through one season of F2 and then get him into that Mercedes seat. Let George be the leader of the team for a while they develop him. That could be a thing. But I mean, I guess we'll see. So if I were going to say what was going to happen next year, I would say that seat does get filled by Kimi. Toto went through too much to make that happen, and for him not to get that seat next year, something major would have to happen, like Max calling and saying, "Hey, let me get that seat." And so, but that's the other thing. So should Mercedes decide to give Kimi another year in Formula Two, with give him another year in Formula Two, you then can go out and get you can get a Sergio Perez. You can get a who else you can get a Fernando Alonso. You can grab a Sergio. Or I already said Sergio. So you can grab a who else? There's so many good drivers, Carlos Sainz, that are going to be out there and available that you can kind of get on that 1 year before the new regulations come in, just to get a good driver in, a solid driver, and you let Kimmy get another year and then bring him in with the new regulations? Or do you want him in the seat right now, get him comfortable with Formula One, so that going into 26, he's ready to kind of fight for the front of the pack with his teammate George. George is fast, and so that's kind of a question. You got to play the kind of got to play both sides and figure out which one. But I kind of feel like they're going to put Kimmy in the seat next year. I think Toto went through too much, not to. So Alex Albon, he's racing well. I mean, Alex has zero pressure right now. I think that he is going to get acclimated with the way the new car is set up this year and kind of get back to that middle top of the rest of the best of the rest. You know what I mean? Right under the top runners. Some good races he may even pull in a little bit in front of them. May catch a couple people by surprise in qualifying. But Alex, as long as he just keeps doing what he's doing, I think he's going to get a good seat. I am hearing news that Red Bull is linking him to that seat, but Alex is not going to take that seat lightly, because this would be a second time in it, and he's going to be fighting hard if he gets that seat again. I'm not sure that's what Red Bull wants. But, yeah, seat is ice cold, and so I don't think that he's going to be in that seat next year. And so that leaves the question, okay, are we shuffling drivers that we already have? But this is my fantasy. And so we are going to put in the Williams. I think we put Ollie Berman in there. No. I'm tripping. I want to see Liam Lawson in that Williams. Yeah, Liam Lawson in that Williams would be a great fit. I kind of want to see him in a faster car, but there's just not going to be very many available. So for now, let's get him into that Williams seat. All right, George Russell, man, George Russell's seat is chilly, but George makes mistakes, man. Like, George drives emotional sometimes. Last year, if Lewis was anywhere near him, he was wrecking his car. You know, I want to see, like, I think George is like fighting for his respect inside the team as well, like where he wants to show that he can be a capable number one, so that when Lewis is gone, whoever they bring in, whether it be a younger driver or a seasoned driver, he gets to be that lead person in the car. He's that number one driver in Mercedes now, and he's got to, show it this year. This is going to be a great opportunity for him to show what he's got. And I don't think he beats Lewis by the end of the year, though. I mean, I think by mid-year, Lewis will turn it up again. We'll get more comfortable in the car, and then the racecraft will be. George is always going to be fast in qualifying, but racecraft, Lewis is going to take the cake. Okay, so Zhou Guanyu, man, Zhou Guanyu's seat is warm, and it's only warm because he brings in a lot of money. If he wasn't bringing in that kind of money, I don't know if he still has a seat in F1 because he's not that fast, or at least he hasn't shown us he has. But not yet. He hasn't shown us. Um, Decent driver. Well, he's more than decent. He's a good driver. But the thing is, if he wasn't bringing in so much money via sponsorship and being a Chinese driver, and there's a Chinese Grand Prix, I don't know that he has his seat still. And so Yuki Tsunoda also got that warm seat. You got to shift a little bit in that thing like this here. But he brings in a lot of money too to the Japanese market. Yuki though, man, like that nonsense where he was like dive bombing Danny in the first race, and swerving near his car and stuff like that, man, like crazy stuff. I mean, they've hashed it out, so I want to dig into it, but Yuki's got he's got to perform. Now he beating the brakes off of Danny right now, so that's another thing. Danny, he's giving you work right now, Danny. So you may want to look into that. But I think his seat's a little bit warm because there's just because there's so many people in the wings. There's so many of them. Um, I liked Liam in that Alpha. I liked Liam in that. Almost called it Alfa Romeo. I liked Liam. Well, it was the Alfa Romeo when he was in it. I liked Liam in that car last year. When he was taking in for Daniel Ricciardo, I thought he was. I thought he was good. Operated well under pressure. It's a good driver. Very good driver. Very fast. So, man, I want to see him in a fast car. I want him in the grip no matter what. But I really want to see him in a competitive car like that. That to me is going to be the biggest portion. Um, okay, so Fernando's seat warm because he wanted to be. Like, you ever get the feeling like Fernando's never like nothing happens around Fernando without him kind of setting it up in advance? Like he always seemed like he in the middle of something. Like he always saying stuff about well, I'm thinking about retiring, and so I'm not sure yet. I've got to have a conversation with him. He knows what he's doing. He's looking to see what seats are going to be available before he makes the decision, and he wants to see what kind of development that Aston Martin has on the way through. Which I don't blame him. The man is I think 43, 44, something like that. Like he's deserved the opportunity to maybe pick and choose some things, but don't get it twisted. I think that his seat is warm because he wants it to be. I think Aston Martin will sign him today if he asks, but he won't. So, Valtteri Bottas. I mean, I think he's still fast. I think it's the car that's making him look the way it looks. But with Valtteri, I also get the feeling that this is not like his one all be all. I think the other things that he does has his interests at the moment. I mean, obviously he's still focused on racing, but I think it's not like it was a couple years ago. And so, his seat is, but not like anybody's pressuring him. I think he's the most carefree kind of the grid. He doesn't need me. He's chill. Nico. Nico is killing it right now. Have you guys seen him? Seen where he's putting that car in the middle of qualifying? It does not belong in Q3 for sure. And K Max shows you that it really doesn't. But Nico has been getting every single bit out of that car that's possible. And I think he's chilly. He gonna go wherever he feel like going. Like whenever I think he's gonna have an opportunity. And so I would love to see Nico get into a car that he can actually compete with because I want to see what he can do. That's it. I just want to see what he can do. And so yeah, I want to see Nico in a car that he can compete in. Yeah, no pressure on him right now. Gasly, there's pressure on Gasly, man. Like he in that slow car coming up all the way in the end. Though, man, I gotta see a little more feistiness out of Gasly right now. Gasly, like, I'm just, I think he's a good racer. You know, I think he's a good driver. I think that he operates well in that mid pack region, but you know, I don't think his popularity is to the point where he's gonna be able to withstand the pressure if he's like at the very bottom of the pack. Like he can't finish last this year. Right now, Ali Berman has more points than he does in the Formula One Constructors Championship or in the Drivers Championship. So take for that as you will. Um, Esteban Ocon, same thing as Gas, the exact same thing. Like no need to rehash. They're the exact same. Um, don't nobody want to see you all the way in the end of the grid. If you're all the way at the back, I don't know if you got enough staying power to stay and keep your seat. There's just too many drivers coming in. Um, Kevin Magnussen, his seat is on fire. I think this is last season. Like that crazy stunt he pulled in the last race. Um, I just thought, a lot of people were upset about that, where he was kind of clogging up the pack. Well, I mean, you got to pass him. I mean, he was doing what he was doing. He was using his car in the best way that he could to help his teammate, and it worked. I mean, was it the most pleasing thing to watch on television? No, but I mean, that's part of the race. Strategy. Um, and I think that's what comes with like an engineering series. You know, if these were all the same spec cars, then he wouldn't have been able to block traffic like that. And so this is a strategy game as much as it is a speed game. And that being said, K Mag, your seat is on fire, my friend. Like it's time to jump out the car, kind of fire, man. Like he not racing well right now. He can be doing better than he is. I think that K Mag is done after this year. The hot seat is open, and I'm gonna give it to who I got left. I'm gonna let Ali get that seat. I feel like I feel like Philippe is gonna get me if I don't get him a seat. But I'll keep looking. I'll keep looking. All right. Okay. Sergio Perez, his seat hot, man. He gonna pull up in that number two spot all year long. I mean, it's just a matter of keeping your head down and going. But his seat hot. They're trying to get rid of him. They got their eyes on somebody else at this point. The thing is, I thought it was weird that like Red Bull is kind of starting to take that stance where like they're like, cool, Verstappen, you can dip if you want to because we got this going on. It's like, man. Anyway, I'm gonna get a wormhole on that, but Sergio's seat super hot right now. Carlos Sainz, your seat ain't hot, man, but you got pressure. Carlos got pressure. He got more pressure than anybody else, I think, because like with him, he ain't got to drive next year, and he don't want to be in the middle of the pack. I don't see him like Valtteri. He don't want to race back there. He been back there already. He want to get the win. He's gonna fight Charles this year. Like he gonna fight Charles for real. And I think it's a toss up. It's not like a far gone conclusion to me that like Charles Leclerc just sprints past Carlos. I think Carlos, if they let him race, I think it's gonna be a dogfight all the way to the end. And so but a lot of pressure on him right now. Danny Ricciardo, boy, you got pressure, brother. You got pressure. Like this is it. Like your popularity is kind of what's keeping him in the hunt every year, And he was wanting that Red Bull seat, but you got to beat Yuki first. They're not giving you that Red Bull seat if you can't beat Yuki. Like you got to beat Yuki, and so you know Visa Cash App, V Carb, they want to call it, bro. You got to beat Yuki, and so Danny, I think, has got a lot of pressure. And last but not least, Logan Sargent. You got the most pressure of all, my friend. As a fellow American, we like to win, and so do all these corporations that you're racing for. And right now, too many mistakes in the car. We not placing well enough. This year you got to be right there next to Alex. You got to be right with him. If you're not, I feel like your seat is up for grabs. I mean, I think they did you a solid by bringing you back again a second year, but you know, with Logan, he needs to minimize the mistakes, put his head down, and get after it. I mean, that's really all that can be said. He has got to go after this thing. Um, I don't know if anybody gets replaced mid-year. I don't know if that happens. A lot of complications with that, but you know, I think that overall, this is going to be a 2024 season watching Max Verstappen scamper away at the front. Sergio will be right behind him somewhere, and we'll race to see who gets third. Unless, we can get one of these engineers, let me say that into the microphone, one of these engineers to get their act together so that we can have some good racing. I don't blame Max, I don't blame Red Bull, I blame the rest of y'all engineers. Engineers, get your work together, get some aerodynamicists or whoever else you got to get, but let's get somebody to chase these guys down. Like, that's going to be the way to go. All right, guys, this has been Outlap Critical, episode number 3. I'll be getting back to this probably right after the Australian Grand Prix, maybe before it. A little more content out there, but again, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it, and leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed the podcast.